Oh my gosh. Okay, let's get on with this.
Yeah. So last video, what did we talk about last video?
Geez, last video.
And welcome back, by the way,
welcome
everyone.
back.
We appreciate you coming back.
Thank you to those of you who have subscribed to the Boiling Point process. Now, for our listeners, this episode is just going to be a regular episode. So if you don't know what we're talking about, go back one episode. Very important. Before you listen to this episode, listen to last week's episode so you get context of what we're talking about here. So this is a part of a 3-part episode series of Dave and I sharing some secrets of our success in building our businesses. And when I say success, I'm talking about success in finding positions of thought leadership. And it's not an easy thing on the outside to find that place in the market as a thought leader. But Dave and I have, by looking back, have developed the 4-step Boiling Point process. And this is episode 2 of 3 of that very podcast.
Yeah.
The process. Starts with the P, podcast process. And so anyway, Dave, now that I'm going off into another tangent, what did we talk about last week?
Well, we touched on some of the challenges that we were up against, the fact that there's no playbook. You know, when you're an entrepreneur starting a business, we had a passion for what we did and what we do, but how do we be well known, and how do we create raving fans? And we recognize that there are a bunch of challenges that we all face, and we've listed a bunch here, but, people say, well, I don't live in a big market. And,
so other people are saying things like, I don't have a large marketing budget. And that's something we talked about in the last episode too. It's like, how do I stand out? How do people hear me if I can't pay for all this, advertising and, Facebook ad buys, all this sort of thing? It's very stressful for a startup entrepreneur.
Absolutely. I don't have a skilled team. We're practitioners in our particular craft, in our particular trade. We're not good at marketing. We're not good at communication. We're not good at out there business development. So we're saying that's okay. We get it. We understand.
How about this one? I'm not qualified.
Yes.
Myself included. So many people have a hard time acknowledging that they actually do have knowledge and they do have skills to share.
Absolutely.
And there's a very good chance they actually are an influencer in their sphere. And but so many people would say, I'm not ready to become a thought leader because I'm not qualified.
Right.
But that's a whole bunch of hogwash.
I totally agree. And what we've found, you and I have found, that another thing, and I see it a lot actually in coaching, you almost got a continuum. And on one side of the continuum, you have people that, and I see a lot of this actually, that want to, I gotta take more courses. I've got to learn about this.
Education.
I've got to get more education. I got to get a certification. I've got to, all of these things.
And all this stuff's good,
which is important.
but it could be the killer of progress if you're going
Right.
to wait.
Because there's planning, and on the other side you got execution, right? And then on the other side is you got people willing to go in and execute. We're saying, well, there's a bit of information, but not too much information that you can have to help you successfully execute. But don't get stuck planning. So in fact, I would say with the last video that people would have watched, and if you haven't, please go back and watch it.
Or episode of the podcast.
Or episode of the podcast. There's some stuff you can take away from there. So this is about action orientation. We're going to talk a little bit about, getting out. There's a discipline around this, but this helps you get over some of the challenges that people typically see in the marketplace.
And when we say this, yes, we are creating a sense of anticipation because we still haven't talked about what our 4-step process is. Yeah. But in this episode, we're going to reveal a little bit of what that is. So thanks for bearing with us on this. It's going to be worth it. A couple solutions to those problems that we just listed. As we start this process as startup entrepreneurs, or even seasoned entrepreneurs who are now ready to take that next step and become a thought leader in their market, is to realize that one of the key ingredients to making this work is to have faith. Faith that it works. And we've had over 200 interviews on the Boiling Point to prove it. Every single one of those people are thought leaders. It is not difficult to actually do justice in your market and become a thought leader if you follow a process.
What comes hand in hand with that is this idea that there's, if you have doubt, it's the killer of any kind of confidence. Doubt is it is normal to feel doubt, but you are qualified And there's a way to be seen as qualified and to be seen as a thought leader. And we talked earlier about, being credible.
Be incredible, yeah.
And that's being competent, but also having integrity and the social proof, meaning that people recognize that, they want to talk to Greg Hemmings because he knows how to help them tell their story. So he's got that credibility. And we all possess this, and is whether we actually use it is the real question.
And the other thing that we talked about that's a problem for so many young entrepreneurs and startup entrepreneurs and anybody trying to become a thought leader is the fact that they don't think they've got a skilled team or they can't afford a skilled team. Well, to that, we want to say that the internet is a beautiful place. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to even basic things like graphic design, like you've got 99 Designs, for example, or Fiverr.com, which I'm a big fan of, for $5, you can get somebody to do pretty much anything for you for your business. Right. There's a ton of resources online. Right. So don't stress out over a few of these things. When I say have faith because there are resources, and we're going to help guide you through that, especially in some of our show notes as we move forward.
100%. And then the last thing I think we want to encourage people, something we've certainly embodied, I would think, to a large degree, is that, and we'll use this. We'll reference the podcast because people are familiar with the podcast. We learned by doing.
100%. And doing together, too, which is neat. And,
so being okay with failing, so being okay with, or not even failing, not being perfect, right? Guy Kawasaki talks about this, and he's the Apple evangelist. I remember hearing him speak, and it was really helpful for me. And he talked about, if you have this software release and you want it to be perfect before it gets out to the marketplace, it's never going to happen.
Well, you know who else talks about that?
But can I share what he says?
Please,
he says, and I don't suggest we be crappy, but don't worry, be crappy is his line, which I always love. And it's this idea that, it's okay not to be perfect. And that's what part of this is about. But you learn by doing versus learning by sitting back, and just listening and absorbing. No, you got to go and do. You got to act on this.
I was going to say the other person who embodies that philosophy very well, who I believe is a friend of Guy Kawasaki, is Seth Godin. He wrote a book called Ship It. And it's an amazing philosophy saying, and he uses this idea of a definition of an artist is somebody who actually makes a creation and then ships it, i.e. shares it. He goes, art is not art until it's shared with somebody. And he brings it over to business by saying, if you are working on something, you have to ship it. Do not wait. Don't wait till it's perfect. Otherwise, it will never get shipped, ever. So the ship it philosophy that Seth Godin and Guy Kawasaki preach often is definitely relevant here to what we're talking about when it comes to putting the time in. Yes, making it perfect. Don't stress out over that.
No, and I think if there's anything that we can be look at ourselves as good role models, it's that, right? Is not being perfect. In fact, and we got some stories we're going to share around. Not following the 4-step process, what it's done for us, and we're going to give some recent examples in a second here. But I just want to remind people that both Greg and I started at
zero,
at the floor. An idea. You called it Hemming House Picture. I called it Vision Coaching Inc. And and we had services we wanted to deliver, and we were learning as we were going. Yeah, at least I was.
Well, definitely, and we were learning together. And this is something we forgot to mention in our first episode, Dave, is the very first year or the first couple of years of Dave and my business being born, we documented.
Yes.
Because Dave hired me to make a documentary about coaching.
Yes.
And the person he was coaching in the film was me. So I was getting coaching out of the deal, and he was getting a film out of the deal. And it's a fun film, and we will also put a link to it in the show notes so you can watch it. It's not available to anybody else, but if you are part of the Boiling Point process, you have access, and we're going to show you how to do that in a few minutes, how to get onto our email list, and that'll be the first thing that we send out to you.
And that was that project was really the start of becoming a thought leader in my case. And there was people that said, well, geez, you've only been in the business for 2 years and you're actually
making films about yourself,
making films about this. And if I kind of look back at it, I go, that's a good point. That's a really good point.
But you know what else is cool about that too is here I am putting myself on camera in a vulnerable way because I'm
Big
legit
time.
telling
Big
you I'm running out of money. I don't know how to make payroll.
Yeah.
What do I do? And like,
Yeah.
so what a cool experiment. You taking the having the guts to jump out and say, I'm a thought leader because I'm making this film, right? Because that was not easy for you to get over your head. And for me to be so open and vulnerable, both of those things I think helped us a lot in
100%. And it was a fun experience. And then I'll share one last thought that was really, I remember thinking, so what I've learned in our business is if someone experiences coaching, they're a client forever. But if they're just trying to understand it and they haven't quite experienced it, it's hard to help support them having the experience without actually having the experience.
Right.
So the idea when I came to you initially was, how could I help create an experience? And you said, well, why don't we document this? And as Greg mentioned, I coached Greg.
It's my way to get a free coaching deal.
And I thought, and it was my way to get a documentary going, and it was creative, and it's all the things we're talking about in terms of what part of being successful in overcoming these challenges. The other piece what I thought was really interesting was in the back of my head, I was thinking, well, what if Hemmings House and Greg don't make it? Yeah. What is that going to say about coaching, right? So I'm proud to be here in your wonderful environment, doing podcasts with you. You got a wonderful team, and if you go back and you get a chance to watch this, you'll see me with a big head of hair.
Me with long hair.
You with long hair. Us both looking a little younger. Pre-children. I certainly looked. I probably. More spry, but what an awesome experience! So that's part of it. So again, going back to the 4-step 1-point process, we've followed these, we've defined them. Now we're going to be sharing that within a few minutes. But what to talk, and if I could interview you for a second,
sure.
When you started, your market, was defined as pretty small, right? It was kind of more of local, and now you're doing. You guys have traveling all over the world.
Yeah.
You've had some like talk about some of the projects you guys have worked on.
Well,
that people would recognize.
As an example, like just in the last month and a half, our crews have been in Los Angeles, San Francisco, Oakland, Portland, North Carolina, Toronto, Calgary, Vancouver, Ghana, Africa, Oslo, Norway.
Wow.
We're traveling all over the place all the time. The big project we did a year ago was called The Real Houses of, and that was a $2 million project, which is really good for a company like ours. Mm-hmm. And it was on W Network and on Oprah Winfrey's network. We've had TV series on the Fight Network, on Rush HD, on Ryan Italy, Discovery Channel. Like our original content has been sold all around the world.
And all because of the coaching you received.
All because of Dave's Vision Coaching. On the commercial side, Dave, we have also been traveling all over the world, like constantly. And it's really cool. Ever since we became a B Corp, we really opened up our market, as we talked about in the last episode,
the last video,
into a world where it's not just B Corps that we're working with, but it's into a world where companies care a little bit more about people and the environment and that sort of thing. And we have become a thought leader in that space. So as a result, it's really cool. It's kind of a neat bridge because I know you and I wanted to talk about what we're up to right now. As a result, a perfect example about how this thought leadership works is we've got a large project that we're doing. Again, totally separate than the one I talked about a minute ago, but also was shot in North Carolina, also shot in San Francisco and a few other places. Oh, and also in Spain as well for this one particular giant company out of San Francisco. And they're huge. They're a multi-billion-dollar company, and they've been the head of their market forever. Wow. And it's one of those legacy companies that's been around forever.
Yeah.
And how do we get the job? Well, they were able to get a marketing firm that I know about. I don't know the people personally at all, but I know of them, and they do work with them. And one day I got a call from the CEO of that marketing company, who we've never done work before. There's really no connection, except we know of each other. And he called me up and he's like, Greg, I've got this client, needs some video, love for you to put in a bid. And I was like, yeah, I'd love to, for sure. And as soon as they said yes to the bid, through their trust in that particular firm, I said, okay, this is great. So I'll work through you, through the marketing company, the way we usually would. They're like, no, you can have the client direct, no problem. And by the way, that's a dream when that happens. When
Yes.
you end up owning the relationship with the client.
Yeah.
So I was like, okay, how did that happen? This person had so much trust in Hemmings House that probably one of his most important clients, we've never worked together before. He trusted us enough to say, here you go, client, you're in good hands with Hemmings House.
I believe, and I've heard this story already, and thank you for sharing it. I mean, you guys have had amazing success. And I think it goes back to, we talk about thought leadership and having credibility. And this gentleman knew you had credibility enough so, and that's integrity and competence, to go back to, that last episode.
And without working with us before. So, no firsthand experience. Right?
That's why I wanted Greg to share the story with all of you, is that it's just such a brilliant example of thought leadership as we define it, and having credibility and finding real bona fide opportunities that that have helped you grow your business.
100%.
And that's by following the 4-step bowling point process.
It is, because it's not that one example. I've got a number of examples, as do you.
Yes.
Of another way of looking at it is, I've got a really fun book called Word of Mouth Marketing, and that's what it is. How do you get people talking about you, talking about your brand, without you paying them to do so, and without you even having to have interactions with them? How is it that I talk about Patagonia all the time? And it's because they've got a story to tell. Or how is it that I talk about any brand that I love? It's because they've got a story to tell. But how do I know the story? It's because I've been listening, and somebody on the brand level did something. In Patagonia's case, it's Yvon Chouinard, the CEO and founder, or not CEO now, but former CEO and founder. And he is such a principled CEO, so values-based, that he has created the most rebellious punk rock company ever. They don't follow any of the rules, and they are truly using their company as a force for good. I'm telling you the story right now as a result, right? So how do we get people to talk about your companies, right? Everybody who's listening here this way. And that's what the Boiling Point process, the 4-step process does. So let's get right into it. Well, actually, Dave, before, do we have examples? Do you have examples you want to share as well?
I mean, kind of highlighting what, what you've described, vision coaching started with me and one other coach. And we went into the marketplace, and we had a way of offering our services. And, over a decade later, a number of years over a decade later, we have 30 coaches. We do business in all over the world. We actually support clients remotely, which is a really cool thing. So you can actually be in your local market. We have coaches all across North America. The story that I would share is as relevant to this is early on, there was in the market that we defined, there was a particular player that we really pushed hard to get work with. And I'm going to say second year, they basically didn't give us the time of day. So fast forward, and this is going back about a year and a half, that same player in the marketplace, and it represents one of the largest employers in our market. Their HR leader came and said, we need you guys to come and present to our HR community about building a coaching culture. And was inviting us in and started doing work with us, and built. We've done work over the last couple of years with them, but it was them pulling us in versus us trying to push our way in.
And coming from a point where they didn't care about you guys, nor did they have any understanding that you are capable of delivering.
It was a massive opportunity for us. And everyone has these examples, where it just, you go, oh, wow, I'm so lucky. Well, no, actually, it wasn't luck. It was actually kind of a disciplined approach that created credibility, such as when you got the call from someone who directly handed you a client. So, without going to more detail, it has really, impacted our brand. We also have a fabulous channel partner who is well known throughout North America, who sells our coaching services. You just have to go on our website to figure out who it is. And it was a dream at one point. So now, again, to have the credibility, it all falls back on, this is a consistent approach to creating credibility. So we wanted to share those stories with you because really where we started and where we are now and where we plan on being, we're gonna continue, and we actually encourage you to push us to make sure we continue to do the same things. Is follow the 4-step process to make sure we're doing the things we're going to describe. So we should jump into that. Any questions about that? Or
no, I think I'm smiling because without even knowing it, we've built so much anticipation about the 4-step process because we haven't told them what it is yet.
Yeah.
But even before we go into telling them, I think we need to foreshadow a little bit about what is it that you and I have been doing to build thought leadership, because the 4-step process is one thing, but the actual tools we've been playing with, let's just give them a hint. Like, we've been consistently podcasting every week for over 200 weeks since the time of this recording right now.
Right.
We've both been publishing in traditional print and in digital with blogs, newsletters.
Yep. We've
been putting on events, whether it's a kick-ass party or like a workshop, webinars, public speaking. I've been honored to be able to speak twice at a TEDx conference. This is social proof. This is the stuff we're talking about. Making videos. We both make videos. We're both very active on social media. So these are the tools in our thought leadership toolkit that are critical. Not necessarily exactly those ones for everybody, but these are the ones that we know how to use and that work for our businesses. And when we look back, and I think it was like 2 or 3 months ago, we looked at each other like, how did we get here to the boiling point? We realized it's because we built thought leadership through doing these exact things, spending next to nothing on marketing. Okay, so let's jump into the 4 steps before people kill us and turn off the thing here.
So enough foreshadowing. So there's 4 steps, and the one most critical step is, and we're just going to talk about it, and we're going to obviously, if you follow along with us, we'll dive much deeper into this in the next video, and then further, should you want to do webinars with us. But it's identifying what Jeff Walker talks about as your avatar. And Jeff Walker is a fascinating guy, product launch formula. So it's identifying your avatar, okay? And we talked a little bit about that last video when we talked about our markets, right? And then our customer, okay? So that's the first step.
So identifying your avatar is, like Dave, you just said, it's critical, because going back to when we were talking about the niche market.
Yeah, and we're going to cover it in the next one.
Yeah, exactly. But like not knowing who your niche market could be, that's what we're going to go over.
Right.
Then becoming a subject matter expert. I think this is a very important thing, because people can sniff through BS pretty quickly. Mm-hmm. Like if you say that you're a subject matter expert and you're not, you'll be caught. Mm-hmm. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now, there's a thing about authenticity here as well, about being real about what you know, but there's a very good chance you do know something more than somebody else. Mm-hmm. So even if you aren't the most knowledgeable in the space,
there's a way.
You can still share and still be a subject matter expert. Just tread carefully, but this is a critical point. You have to know your stuff before you are going to go to that next level of thought leadership. What's the third step, Dave?
So it's being seen as a thought leader.
It's also being seen as a thought leader.
So seen as a thought leader.
And it's interesting that we use the word seen as well, right? Because it's not up to us to be a thought leader, right? It's the outside world seeing us as thought leaders.
Right. And we talk about social proof, and when people come up to you or call you with a specific project, it's because somehow they're seeing you as a thought leader, and you used that example earlier, and there's a way to do that. So absolutely, that whether you think so or not is irrelevant. It's whether the market that you want to be in sees you as a thought leader.
And that's critical. And later on, we are going to go much deeper detail about what all this stuff means. But the fourth, and this is one that I'm so excited about, because friends buy from friends. End of story. Now, when I talked about Patagonia earlier, do I want to buy a jacket from, let's say, Walmart or from Patagonia? I'm friends with Patagonia, even though I don't know them personally. I'm friends with them because we have shared values. Mm-hmm. I'm also friends with them because they're a B Corp, and so are we. There's all these reasons why I'm part of the Patagonia community, and I want to buy from them. I want to support them because we're part of the same community. So how do we build communities around our businesses, communities around our brand, communities around us as entrepreneurs? we do this right now, Dave, with the Boiling Point.
Yeah.
We've got listeners from all around the world
Yeah.
who are our community.
Yeah.
And,
How much did we spend to build that community?
Geez, not a lot. I mean, like the technical gear and rentals and all that stuff, like we've never tracked it.
How
but
many
it's
marketing dollars do we have do you think?
zero.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've spent nothing.
And some
We have bought a few ciders and beers to get us through some of the.
That's true. That's
yeah.
true. But I mean, that's an important point. And yet there's a community of listeners, and we watch and track our stats, and to our, surprise on some level, when we saw some of our interviews and the amount of downloads and amount of listens
From all over the world. Yeah.
all over the world, and then the comments, and then to be seen, to be covered on Dragon's Den as one of must listen podcasts,
And
Workopolis, and what's amazing is this building of a community, and then the other interesting thing is we have the question I had early on from someone was, well, when will you run out of gas? No, we have the opposite problem. We got people. We have media companies contacting us. Would you interview this author? Would you interview? So it's not an issue, right? And it works perfectly. But this idea of building community happened, and the podcast is an example of that.
And I love that you said that too, because we've spent zero on Facebook ads, zero, which is really interesting because we just haven't, because we just haven't. We've been doing the Boiling Point for to serve our community, and we haven't accelerated. As soon as we throw some marketing dollars behind it, I'm sure it's going to rip.
Yeah.
But we've done this for how many years now? 3 years?
I have no idea.
And we've built a global community without spending a dime. Now, all the stuff that you see here, these fancy mics, these fancy cameras, yeah, it all costs money. But you don't need to do it this way. We're doing it because I happen to own a film production company. So we're cheating a little bit. I'm just joking. But you could do this with the little camera on your laptop and a little computer microphone.
Yeah.
To make a good podcast. And we're going to go through that later on too, as far as the podcasting element, how actually easy it can be and affordable.
So why don't we, we've talked about kind of our experience and some of the social proof that we've seen, and we're growing, and we're still building, and we're you're inching at new and greater levels. But it was important for us to talk about some experiences we had in relation, and it was kind of neat actually to go through where we started and some of the stuff that's happening. That's really affirming, by the way. It's a really good activity. I would encourage everyone to do. I certainly do it in coaching. I don't do it enough myself, but doing this video has kind of caused us to do that, to go back and to reflect, where you started and some of the stuff that's happened. So that's this idea of experience and social proof.
100%. And also, we talked about the fears, what some people have, like, is it too expensive, too much time? And we referenced Guy Kawasaki and Seth Godin to say, you just got to ship it, and don't worry, be crappy.
Don't worry, be crappy. Yeah.
Or don't worry, be scrappy. Why don't use that one?
I like that. I think that's
scrappy is good. I mean, the YouTube generation has proved it.
Right.
The fact that we don't need high production videos anymore, and at Hemming's house, we have to. That's a reality for us.
Right.
Is we got customers that don't need us really, so we have to bring value in different ways. Right.
We identified possible barriers and I think a lot of the barriers that people have, and a saying I don't know who to attribute to, but I use it a lot when I talk to people, when I speak, or even in coaching conversations, or even when I'm considering some of the challenges that I'm seeing or barriers I'm seeing. The biggest battles we fight are between our two ears. And a lot of the barriers people see is really their thinking. And there's a whole bunch of ways through that. And we're trying to be, testaments to that, right? And it's not that things don't come up for both of us, but it's just this reminder that, there are massive opportunities out there.
And then we ended off by actually finally telling people what the 4-step Boiling Point process is. And let's go over it again. Identifying your avatar, becoming a subject matter expert, being seen as a thought leader, and building community. So those 4 steps are, now we haven't told you how to do those yet. You could leave today right now with those 4 steps and just know that that's your framework, and you'll be successful.
Absolutely.
Sure. But we're going to go deeper into how we've used those 4 steps, the tools we've used, the processes we've used, the investments we've made. We're going to be going into this as time goes on the Boiling Point.
Yeah. And on some level, I'm thinking it doesn't sound magical, but it works. And or maybe it's for someone that does, like, wow, I've never thought of it that way before.
Do you know what? You and I both took Jeff Walker's product launch formula course, and the thing I really liked about him is he warned everybody. He said, "Listen, there's going to be elements of this that you're going to say, oh, I already know that, or yeah, that's kind of simple, whatever, and skip past it. I want to encourage you the way he encouraged us, say, no, stick with it. This process actually works, and we are living proof of it.
Yeah.
And it sounds very simple. It can be simple, and it can be complex. But it's one of those sliding scales, depending on how robust you want to get. Everything works a little bit differently for other people. You got to put the time in. And in the next episode, we're going to dig even a little bit deeper on some of the tactics.
So before we leave, love for you to comment as the listeners. And we've kind of shared some of the stuff that we're aware of, that we've maybe seen ourselves in terms of obstacles. But what are obstacles you feel you have to becoming a thought leader? Or what is slowing you down from really entering your marketplace? So it'd just be good to hear, to know what's going on for you. So we'd love to hear some of your comments. Anything else?
Yeah, I made some cheat sheets here too, because I really do want to hear from our audience. What are some of the opportunities that you've noticed in your marketplace for you to shine in as a thought leader? Just be vulnerable for a second and put it out there. And there's nothing more accountable than actually putting it out there into our community and say, hey, I can be a thought leader in X, Y, or Z. I highly encourage you to do that. And also, again, tell us who you are, what your company is, what your service is, how do you show up in the world? Because we are a community here, and we're here to support each other. Who knows what type of business development opportunities comes out of this as people who are collectively taking the boiling point process with us. And with that, I'm really stoked to jump into the third module.
Yeah, and so in our next podcast or video, whichever way you're consuming this, we're going to drill down further into the 4 steps. Okay, we're going to give you more information, a lot to actually build from. So we hope you join us in the next one, where we go into the 4 steps, but in a way that you can actually walk away from this next video or podcast with really armed, as Greg said earlier, with the framework. So join us for that. Thank you for participating so far. Surprisingly, this has been challenging to keep as short as it is. It might, maybe to the listener it seems long, but to us it seems so short because there's so much more we want to add.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
But we'll see you in the next video.
And keep that pot boiling.
Bubble.
How long was that one, Mike?
Can we get a tail slate?
Oh, yeah, sure.
What's that? What's a tail slate?
Tail slate.
This one might have, I'm not sure. Okay, cool.
Hi, Steve. How's that, buddy? Extra. Okay, Mike, good. How many minutes was that, buddy?
That was a little bit longer. Do you remember when I said at the start was left on the card?
Oh.